Okay, today I'm going to address something very important because we've come to this point in our history where a majority of Australians have literally had enough of a government they don't understand. You are dealing with a foreign power in your land that is collapsing right now. And if you don't address this situation, you are going to be left without while you give the authority to that foreign power to use your children as debt fodder and fodder in wars of aggression around the world. We are watching a world go into war because a Zionist administration of your countries is collapsing around you. Now, the Australian government sat down and watched the 1975 pedophile tapes, and Heffernan named 29 high-ranking officials in the Australian government and the judiciary and made the statement that if the Australian people were to find out about these 29 names, they would have no faith in the Australian government or the judiciary. What this means is that your high-ranking politicians like prime ministers are actually involved in pedophilia. What this means is that Supreme Court justices and High Court justices are directly involved in pedophilia. We have seen recently in the media that Zionism is the source of this pedophilia. We are also seeing very clearly in Australia, as well as the United States, the downfall of this cartel. And it's a mafia. It is an unlawful mafia, according to international law. We have also seen a forced medical procedure and medical experimentation on the population of Australia by this mafia. Now, at law, we have worked for 20 years to establish something. And I don't like reading while I'm on camera, but I'm going to have to. This is important because it is sealed at law. This exists on the Supreme Court record. This is a reality for all of you. You are flying the flag of a foreign power, an admiralty flag of a foreign country, a blue ensign with a 7-pointed star. You are showing your loyalty to something that is not in lineage to your Anzac at law. And this is important, as I'm going to read. Declaration of Sovereignty. I, Stephen, the first of his name, true King of Australia, so help me God, do hereby declare divine authority. My sovereignty is granted directly by Almighty God, the source of all law, justice, and covenant authority, constitutional and legal basis. The Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia, effective the 1st of January 1901, establishes the line of authority under the blessing of Almighty God in the kingdom established by your Anzac, the Kingdom of Australia, and the Constitution, God, King, and Country. The transformations of 1919 at the Treaty of Versailles and subsequent imperial conferences recognises Australia as a sovereign kingdom under law. The abdication of 1936 removed an external guardian, leaving the Kingdom of Australia temporarily under administrative control. without nullifying the lawful and divinely sanctioned sovereignty of the Kingdom of Australia. Restoration of that sovereignty. I hereby assert my full and indissoluble authority over the Kingdom of Australia, its constitution, and all instruments of covenantal and national governance. The Red Duster, otherwise known as the Blood and the Guts by your Anzac, the Royal Standard, the Sword in the Stone, and the Fourth Temple stand as symbols and instruments of this divine and lawful authority. Recognition of Aboriginal sovereignty. The Aborigine tribes of this land are sovereign entities, governed by their own chiefs and ancestral laws. My authority is covenantal harmony with theirs, ensuring protection, respect, and alignment under God's laws. Protection of the remnant and covenant. I commit to defending the remnant, the covenant, and all lawful rights and heritage of the people of Aurora Australis. Any foreign administrative claims or impositions that contradict this law, covenant, or divine authority are illegitimate, null, and void. Affirmation of eternal authority. This declaration restores the line of authority from God to the King, to the people of the kingdom, reaffirming the indissoluble nature of the Constitution and the enduring sovereignty of Australia. Let all who hear or witness these words bear witness. The Kingdom of Australia stands lawful, sovereign, and consecrated under God, and its true King shall defend and uphold in accordance with divine and constitutional law. So help me God. Now, this has been established over 20 years of sitting in courtrooms around the country, from the Northern Territory, Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland. You have copied this work to try and get out of fines and push your own agendas around in a manner that is a desecration to that lineage in God, King, and country. For you to keep pushing this into courts without knowing who you are and are standing in that lineage is demonstrating that you are without a capacity at law to speak. You are being guardianed by an administrative power under rules of engagement in the Hague and Geneva Conventions. I will repeat in that when you fly that blue ensign with a 7-pointed star introduced into this country in 1954 along with papal St. Edward's crown, you are giving authority to a government to keep nannying over you. The Pope left the building recalling all movable property in 2019. What this means is that he vacated his administrative position, leaving the moneylender to scramble to survive. This is why you saw Israel immediately go to war, because it has come to the end of the rules of usufruct. It is up to all of you to recognize this position in international law and adhere to the law in God, King, and country, and demonstrate that by flying the red duster or blood and guts of your Anzac, the red standard or land war flag they flew into battle in 1914 to 1918. This is the spirit of your Anzac. This is the lineage and foundation of a sovereign country at international law, which went into the demise of currency and eventually into full administration by foreign powers. You continue to fly the flag of that foreign power in your land ignorantly. We could name a host of names that aid and abet this through their media activities. We can also demonstrate that the judiciary is failing to uphold the law when it comes to serious matters of murder, attempted murder, and so on. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the Parliament sat down to watch 1975 pedophile tapes, at which Heffernan already named 29 names that were put under the rug in a suppression order which needs to be lifted. We also know that this foreign administrative power is the one that murdered people at Port Arthur. This was in a bid to remove your defences from you, at which you had a right to bear arms according to law. The Bill of Rights 1688 is imperial law and is of the Australian Imperial Crown, so defined at that Treaty of Versailles. You have a right to bear arms, and you are currently watching this administrative power further remove that right from you. They serve a foreign power, and you have every right at international law to defend yourselves from or against that foreign power. This doesn't mean that you can go and create civil war according to law. This puts you in a position where the police, the states, and the federal parliament are responsible for a whole host of war crimes that they have committed against you as a people while under rules of engagement in the Hague and Geneva Conventions. They have been human trafficking you with traffic fines. They have committed grave and heinous offences called crimes against humanity. They committed offences of forced medical procedure and medical experimentation. They have you in world bondage or slavery, which at law is unlawful. They have tricked you into consenting to this because at the law, the only way they can keep you as a bonded slave is by your own admission. It is called voluntary servitude. You are serving the interests of a foreign power instead of standing in the capacity at law as the occupied people, occupied by people that have committed pedophilia and war crimes. It is now time for you to realize that this has been established at law going back as early as 2009. The reason you are starting to hear about it today is obviously because this administering power is now attempting to administer you out of the last of everything you are. You have claims over your towns at which you have the ability to put this evidence before your Lord Mayor. They are obligated at law to follow the Constitution and all laws in a line of authority through God, King, and country. You should put this evidence before the Supreme Courts of all states, and we will make headway towards the federal court to charge these politicians with the criminal offences that they have indeed done, like Pauline Hanson's open display of obedience and adherence to Israel on the Senate floor. That's a minor crime in relation to other crimes committed by the Australian Defence Force under the command of Governor-General Hurley and COVID Task Force Commander Fruin and Chief of Defence Angus Campbell. What has occurred is an international war crime under Command Line Responsibility or Yamashita Protocol that involves the top brass of not only your politicians, your parliament, your judiciary, but also the Australian Defence Force. This is a very serious matter that you all need to start waking up to. This is a very serious matter that involves the future sovereignty of your constitution and ensuring that that indissoluble document remains in lineage as it was created. It cannot therefore be given to another power. And the government attempting to dismantle that power and turn you into a republic for the last 50 plus years. I mean, we're talking about going back to 1946 when Robert Menzies pushed that Republican and Democratic ideology onto you when you are not a democratic nation. You are indeed an indissoluble federal commonwealth under the blessing of Almighty God. This defines your heritage, your culture, your lineage in your Anzac, and the predecessor of the English documented constitutional law that includes things like the Bill of Rights 1688, the Act of Settlement 1700, the Magna Carta, and so on. The same would apply for the United States of America, currently under the thumb of that Zionist power, forcing its hand on Donald Trump, who is now being outed as the pedophile that he is. The Epstein list is now being collated by the victims of Epstein and his cartel, which is directly linked to Israel, Mossad, and the CIA, otherwise known as the Deep State. The Deep State is the occupying military intelligence that controls your countries. It is very clear that this financial arrangement is through Israel. It is very clear that Charles III is under the thumb of that Zionism. It is very clear that the President of the United States is under the thumb of that Zionism. It is also very clear that your Australian Parliament, the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia, is under the thumb of that Zionism. It is very, very, very clear that the standing defined on the Supreme Court record in multiple states and territories supersedes this, and the declaration read out at the beginning of the video confirms this at the law. All peoples in government, police, army, and so on are obligated to that law. This puts the international laws of armed conflict on the table and international humanitarian law, wherein they have committed all these crimes against humanity. So be aware that this is a reality, and all of this sovereign citizen ideology is you attempting to scramble out of administration without grounding yourselves in God, King, and country, in a lineage of your Anzac defined at international law. It is the only place you can return to when occupied by foreign powers. If you believe the attempt to create something else and abandon who you are, including your flags, including your Great Seal of the Commonwealth of Australia, you are deluded to think that as a reality. As an occupied people, your only ability to return to international law is in a right of self-determination within those international laws. This means that you must return home from being lost at seas, flying an admiralty flag of a foreign power in that blue ensign with 7-pointed star. You are to fly the land war flag of your Anzac. You are to remember their sacrifice, and you are to honour the Royal Australian Navy, the Royal Australian Army, and the Royal Australian Air Force in the correct capacity under that red duster or land war flag, and the accordingly similar flags of the Naval and Air Force. These are your histories. You can only return back to them. So I'm here to speak in conviction, in confidence that we have established at law the very foundations of your country that were left for you by your Anzac, that you are required to return to or remain lost at seas serving a foreign power in Zionism linked to that blue ensign, a naval flag of a foreign power displaying 7-pointed star. You only need to look at your florin, your 50-cent round, and the 50-cent piece to see the steps of change that brought around that 7-pointed star. In the collapse of administration, you are going to be left with nothing. That is why we must stand in God, King, and country, so that they cannot remove from us the very thing that forges and founds this country and holds authority over and above the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia in its indissoluble capacity at law in God, King, and country. What this means is that they cannot take this from you and turn it into a republic. They cannot take this from you and replace your sovereignty with someone else's sovereignty when those people that they attempt to replace you with should already have their own sovereignty. And we're talking about Aborigine Australia trying to undermine your constitution instead of recognise their own sovereign capacity at international law as individual tribes. Always was? No. We are towns and cities across this continent. We lived side by side with sovereign tribal peoples, with chiefs and elders that you should respect for being those individual tribal peoples. They are not nations. They do not appear on other nations' maps. Nations are admiralty. International law is admiralty. And the job of a national government is to protect the seas of the Pacific Rim. This is what Scott Morrison constantly told you. Our job is to protect the Pacific Rim. Your job is to stand in your capacity lawfully and return in a right of self-determination to the people you are, instead of tantying like children in the streets and attempting to push courtrooms with your false ideologies and your incompetent litigancy. You are incompetent litigants, and the government is attempting to paint your incompetency as being a sovereign citizen. This is mostly for the reason of not knowing who you are in that self-determination and standing united as that people and rising up against a foreign power that has committed heinous war crimes on Australian soil. So before you attend any protest on September 13th, realise if you participate in that madness, you are giving authority to a foreign power to use your children not only as debt fodder to an international banking cartel, but also real-world war fodder in wars of aggression that they require you to participate in while you serve them and not your lineage in God, King and country. This is a hard video to absorb. This is a reality for you that has been defined on the court record. This is a reality for you and a final wake-up call to all Australians to realise the legal position they have found themselves in and change that for the future of your children and their unborn children. The ongoing sovereignty of a country that stood in international law and lost the most amount of lives per capita than any other country in World War I. This is why Billy Hughes stood so adamantly at the Treaty of Versailles and stated very clearly, no, you will give us what is ours. And it is up to us to follow in those footsteps and say to a foreign power government in our land, no, you will give us what is ours.